Hello everyone. Today I'd like to describe this, which is a horribly broken IKEA light, and I'd like to go through the process of replacing it with this, which I'm calling a feature light. So if you will, I'd like to show you my process for building this. So here we go. I started with what are called handy panels that I picked up from Home Depot. So these are just 2 foot by 2 foot pieces of plywood. So the goal here was to separate everything into 1 foot segments. So there, I cut the handy panel in half, and now I'm just cutting that half into half again. So that would form the shelves for the light. So I'm just cutting this with my circular saw. Next step was to take those shelves and just mark out on some 2x2, 4 foot long 2x2s where the shelves would go, and I chose 1 foot increments. So from there, what I set out to do was do some hand roundovers on those 2x2s using a block plane. So it took me a little while to get set up with the block plane to get it removing material in a manner that I liked. So this first one took longer than anticipated, but once I was rounding over those corners nicely, everything else went pretty smoothly. So it did take quite a long time to get the block plane set up the way that I wanted it to, but it went well. And then I just started sanding the roundovers, and I was very happy with the look that I achieved there. So from there, the goal here was to notch out each of the corners of those shelves to fit the 2x2 legs for the light. So there I'm just using my speed square and a jigsaw and just notching out each shelf to fit the 2x2. So there you can see I was just doing a rough fit there. From there, I decided to do some edge banding on the shelves. So what I didn't want was the plywood, the sides of the plywood, to be facing the person looking at the light. So the edge banding solved that problem. So there I'm just ironing on the edge banding, and then I'm using a knife to cut off the excess. And I'm very pleased with how this went. This was admittedly the first time that I'd ever done edge banding, but it's simple. I mean, you're just using an iron and you're activating the glue and then cutting off the excess, and a quick sand afterwards. And I was really happy with the look that I pulled off here. So just wrapping up a little bit of excess there. So what came next was to do some joinery. So I chose dowels for this. So here I'm just using those reference points that I made on the 2x2s for each shelf. As I mentioned, the goal was to put them 1 foot apart on a 4 foot long piece of 2x2. So 3 shelves. And here I'm just using my drill press to drill the holes on the 2x2s. And what I've got there is just a piece of tape on the drill bit to the halfway point of a dowel. So the problem here was I couldn't use the drill press on the shelves because they didn't fit under the drill press. So that was a big limitation. So I just did what I've done previously, and I've used a drill and a speed square. So that worked really well. So it came time to start putting the shelves on. I decided to use quite a lot of masking tape, and in retrospect, I don't know why I used green masking tape. That was a huge, well, it wasn't a huge error. It was an error. I had proper masking tape, and I wish that I had used it, but enough about that. So I'm just applying some wood glue, and I used a second shelf there as a spacer. So just to make sure that everything was lined up. And then I put the first shelf in with some glue, and then clamped everything off, checked it all with a square, and then I proceeded to do the other two shelves on one side. So the next step was to do the other side. So here I am essentially repeating the same process for the other two legs, checking with a square, trying to make sure that I get the same height on all four legs. And then here I am with the speed square and the drill again, drilling some holes for the dowels. And I've gotten very good at it. And here I am again with the green masking tape. It pains me to watch that, knowing what I had to go through to get the green masking tape off after it mixed with the wood glue. Bright green tape remaining on my finished wood project, but I'll stop beating myself up about that. So here I'm just using some clamps. Down at the bottom I used some rope just to keep that in place. I need more clamps. So once that was all dry, here the goal was to do a sand. So I'm using a hand sander with 80 grit sandpaper and really giving it a good once over. This was admittedly pretty tough because there's a lot of surfaces here and a lot of tight spaces, but it went well. And then I used some 100 grit sandpaper just by hand and did some more sanding, especially on the roundovers. I wanted to look clean and crisp. So once that was all done, the next step was to apply some wood conditioner. So this was in advance of staining the wood. As you can see, as that wood conditioner goes on, it has a really nice effect. So the goal here is to reduce the blotchiness of the eventual stain that goes on by using the wood conditioner. But I actually really like the look of the piece with the wood conditioner on it. So I found that interesting. It gave it a really nice warm look. Okay, so the next step was to move to my father's workshop being set up in progress. And what we did here was take more of those handy panels and cut some 45-degree angles to make the feature box. And the next step from there was to actually make the feature part of it, which is a neat little pattern that I made with some hole saws. So I just marked those out with some pencil and then moved over to the drill press. Please excuse the shaky camera focus. And this was the first go, and we ended up getting quite a lot of burnout on the holes from the saws. And there's the burnout. The solution was to drill all the way through and then go halfway down on each side with the hole saw until the hole was punched out. So here I am transferring the holes to the other pieces by raising one of the pieces of the wood, and then now I'm actually drilling all the way through and going halfway on each side, and I did all four panels. So the next step was to glue up the actual feature box, and here I'm using a right angle clamp and the proper color of masking tape this time. Didn't make that mistake again. So that was all put in place, and I did a couple sides at once and then clamped it all up. So here I am on a very hot day on my front porch, actually applying the stain. In this case, I went with what's called a classic gray, and that was partly my wife requested gray, which I thought was very interesting. So here I am just using a rag and applying the stain to both the shelf part of the build as well as the feature box. So this all went very well, and no problems here. All right, so here is the final product. It's all finished. Finally. So a lot of work went into this, but I'm very happy with it. So just taking a look. I finished with the classic gray stain, and admittedly it was going out on a ledge for me, but I really like it. It gives it a very rustic feel. So I'm glad that turned out very well. So a lot has happened to get this to the finished state. So let me just unpack that very quickly. So I've got this, obviously the feature box, as I'm calling it, up here on the top shelf. So that's all put together, and I just wanted to take a look inside and just describe some of the things that are happening here. So what I did was I took the base for that IKEA light, the broken IKEA light that we had, and I used that to go and hold the light bulb. So it's a little difficult to see. Hopefully you can see that down there. I bought a ceramic socket for the light bulb, and I'll just include a link for that below. And all I did was hot glue that to that old IKEA light base. So nothing special there. And what I did was I notched out a little space for the electrical cord to come out of the box so it could sit flush on the shelf here. And then what I did from there was I just used some plastic clips and attached those to one of the legs and ran it down the back and plugged it in. So what that does is does a very good job of just hiding the cable coming down, so it creates a really neat effect. Then lastly, I did a lot of research on what I could use to diffuse the light coming from the bulb on the outside, and just with a little bit of research I came across vellum paper, which I had seen before but never knew the name of. So I got this from Michael's. I'll include a link to this as well. I got this from Michael's, and what the person at Michael's described to me as being one of the prime uses that I've likely seen is on wedding invitations. So it's just a really like translucent, it's not exactly thin, like it's got some weight to it. So I've just used some tape and kind of crudely stuck this on there with tape. I'm gonna have to maybe make a better way to make this less visible, but I just wanted to get this on there. I initially tried using hot glue and it just didn't work, so I'll maybe go with some clear, some clear tape here to make this show. I did actually try that right there. So I've got some clear tape holding this part on. So we'll see how this goes. This is going to work for me for now. And oh yes, one final part is that I used some double-sided Velcro tape on the 4 points of this feature box. So you can see some Velcro tape there. And the reason I did that is that I may actually want to make a few of these boxes with different designs. So I'm not sure which designs I'll go for, but I wanted to leave myself that option. And I considered using an L bracket with a couple of small screws to hold this to the top shelf. But there's something about me that didn't want to put a hole in one of the shelves for whatever reason. Maybe one day I don't want a light feature on this and I just want it to be a set of shelves. I didn't want a hole in this top shelf. So that's just me. If you choose to build something like this, you can do whatever you want. But that was just the decision that I made. So here, let's test it out. So the cool thing is that that's a smart bulb in there. So using Philips Hue. So There you go. Cool. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. It's a big improvement over the broken IKEA light that we had there previously. So I'll probably continue to tinker with it a little bit, but really happy to have this here. So hopefully you enjoyed going through this process with me, and please let me know what you think. Thanks.